Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into a really fascinating set of preliminary reports for July 2025, all about Japan's industrial production. And what we found is, well, kind of a puzzle. A major global manufacturing hub struggling in some core areas, but seeing unexpected growth elsewhere. We have a lot of quite detailed data here, production, shipments, inventories across different sectors. And it paints, let's say, a highly nuanced picture. So our mission today is to unpack these key trends, try to understand what's driving things in specific industries, and explore what it all means for the bigger economic picture, particularly for those of us tracking global manufacturing and, supply chains. Okay, let's get into it. So kicking off, the headline numbers for July, they're out, and yeah, at first glance, it really does look like a bit of a mixed bag. Production's down, shipments are down too, but then inventories and inventory ratios are actually both up. It feels like we're looking for a clear signal, but getting conflicting messages instead.
That's a really good way to put it. And it lines up perfectly with how the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry Métis sees it. Based on the prepared resources, they use this phrase, row. It translates really well as one step forward, one step back. What's interesting is that despite some clearly negative numbers, this assessment frames it less as a decline and more like, well, a holding pattern. It's this kind of push and pull, suggesting that while things are tough, there's also resilience. It's stopping a clear trend either way, up or down.
Yeah, that one step forward, one step back phrase just perfectly captures it. It's definitely not a simple story, is it?
Not at all.
You see these dips and rises, and it really underlines the complexity, maybe even the fragility of the current economic climate, like an engine with some parts sputtering and others running just fine. Let's zoom in on production first. That's usually our earliest sign, right? The seasonally adjusted index for July 2025 was 101.6. Now, that seasonal adjustment is key. It strips out the predictable monthly ups and downs. So this 1.6% drop month over month, the first decrease in 2 months, it feels, well, genuine, not just a seasonal blip. And here's what gets really interesting. Out of 15 industrial sectors, nearly 2/3, 9 of them saw production go down. Only 6 went up. So a clean majority pulling the average down. And looking at the list, the usual suspects seem to be playing a big part. Autos, production machinery.
Absolutely. The data clearly shows the biggest drags came from those heavy hitters. The automotive industry, specifically ordinary passenger cars and those complex drive transmission and steering parts, saw a noticeable drop. And this isn't just Japan, is it? It reflects global pressures, demand shifts, maybe ongoing supply chain kinks, the EV transition costs.
Exactly.
And then you have production machinery, things like crucial semiconductor manufacturing equipment also taking a hit. That specific drop in capital goods is a really key indicator. If firms are cutting back on chip-making equipment, it says a lot about future tech output, maybe broader industrial confidence. Could signal a global tech slowdown or just caution on spending?
That's a critical point why these sectors are down. It suggests something maybe more systemic in areas that drive future growth. But on the other hand, we did see some bright spots kind of bucking the trend.
Indeed. It wasn't all, doom and gloom. Electrical and information communication machinery, for instance, showed pretty strong growth. Seems like notebook and desktop PCs were the drivers there.
Ah, okay. Maybe hybrid work, education needs, or just a refresh cycle.
Could be any of those.
Yeah.
And we also saw a lift in the chemical industry, but specifically things like hair care cosmetics and lotions, not the heavy industrial chemicals or medicines.
Interesting.
And finally, electronic parts and devices, think electronic circuit boards, MOS-type ICs, those logic chips, they were also up.
So this raises a really key question, doesn't it? Why are these industries moving in such different directions? You've got big ticket items, industrial machinery contracting, but then personal computers, personal care, basic electronic components are doing well. What's this divergence telling us about demand shifts globally?
Well, what's fascinating is the story it tells. The strength in, say, certain electronics and consumer chemicals might point to specific pockets of demand, or maybe a subtle shift in how people are spending. Perhaps folks are, tightening belts on big buys like cars or machinery, but still prioritizing personal well-being, maybe affordable treats, and keeping their digital setup running for work and life.
That makes sense.
For global manufacturers, this isn't just data. It signals a need to really reevaluate where the resilient demand actually is.
Yeah.
Are we seeing a permanent shift post-pandemic, favoring digital and personal care over traditional durables? That could have big long-term effects on R&D, capacity planning, even jobs. Not just in Japan, but everywhere.
Yeah.
It suggests broad assumptions might be risky right now. We need a more granular sector-by-sector view.
That's a powerful point. It's not uniform, it's very selective. It needs a nuanced view. Okay, moving from what's being made to what's being sold. July's industrial shipments, seasonally adjusted index 98.9. That's down 2.5% month over month. And it's the second month in a row of decreases. So weakness not just in output, but actually getting goods to market.
Right, the flow is slowing down.
And similar to production, shipments were mixed, but again, leaning negative. 8 out of 15 sectors saw shipments fall. No big surprise, the auto industry was a major factor. Again, ordinary passenger cars, trucks.
Yeah, seeing that consistently.
Production machinery too, semiconductor equipment, excavators, big drops in shipments there. And those general purpose machines we mentioned, like conveyors, boiler parts, also down significantly. But again, there's the other side. 6 sectors saw shipments rise. Electronic parts and devices, those MOS type ICs, circuit boards, and electrical infocom machinery like PCs, they were up.
So mirroring the production side somewhat?
Exactly. And other things too, like woven textiles, regenerated fibers, showed growth. Expert, when you look at those declining shipment areas, especially capital goods and durable consumer goods, what's the immediate takeaway about demand for those big-ticket items?
It tells us businesses and consumers are being, well, remarkably cautious with bigger purchases. If we break down shipments by demand type, it gets even clearer. Capital goods, if you exclude transport machinery, dropped a hefty 8.4%.
Wow, 8.4%.
Yeah, mostly because fewer semiconductor machines and conveyors were shipped. That's not just a blip. It points to slower business investment, less industrial expansion. Companies are likely putting off upgrades, maybe new projects because of all the uncertainty. Then durable consumer goods also down quite a bit, 6.7%, mostly lower shipments of passenger cars, both ordinary and light ones. That directly reflects consumer anxiety, doesn't it? When people feel unsure, they hold onto their cars longer, delay buying new ones.
Makes perfect sense.
Producer goods, the intermediate parts, were down 1.0%, linked to things like chassis parts, drive components. Even construction goods dipped 2.4%, with fewer bridges and less cement shipped. That could signal construction activity cooling off.
So weakness across almost all the big categories, especially the ones that usually signal expansion. But then, interestingly, non-durable consumer goods actually increased 0.6%, buoyed by, as you said, textiles and hair care cosmetics. This contrast is pretty stark, isn't it? Struggling capital goods, resilient non-durables. What's the read on that? Cautious consumers shifting priorities, or something else?
It's likely a bit of both, and it's quite insightful about consumer behavior right now. Consumers facing inflation, uncertainty, they pull back on the big discretionary buys like cars, appliances. Those can wait.
Right.
But the steady demand for things like hair care or textiles, that suggests maybe a baseline level of personal spending stays stable or even goes up as a kind of affordable treat or necessity.
Kind of the lipstick effect, maybe.
Sort of, yeah. It signals where confidence might still be okay. Daily needs, small luxuries, rather than big investments. For businesses, it means knowing which products are recession resilient versus cycle sensitive.
A critical distinction, definitely. The psychology of spending. Okay, now let's talk inventories. What's sitting in warehouses? Industrial inventories actually saw a 0.8% month-over-month increase in July. Index at a 100-point year. That's the first rise in 4 months.
So stuff is piling up a bit.
Seems like it. And the inventory ratio, inventory relative to shipments, also ticked up 0.4%, reaching 106.8. That's the second month in a row it's risen. So what's this telling us? Rising inventories in key areas, especially autos, again, ordinary trucks, passenger cars were the biggest contributors here. But inventories fell in some sectors, like inorganic, organic chemicals, synthetic rubber, polystyrene saw drops. Expert, what's driving this pileup, particularly in autos, especially when shipments are also down?
Yeah, that's the key question. Efficiency, foresight. The repaired resources point out something important about the inventory cycle diagram. Think of it like a map tracking stock levels versus sales. Japan went through an inventory accumulation phase from late 2021 to mid-2023. Stock built up. Then, Q3 2023, it shifted to inventory adjustment, trying to actively cut stock.
Okay.
But the early forecast for Q3 2025 puts it in an unintended inventory reduction phase. Now that sounds odd, but it suggests a tricky spot where, despite trying to cut stock, goods are still building up or not clearing fast enough compared to production, especially in areas like autos.
So supply and demand are out of sync.
Exactly. Could be overly optimistic production plans, or maybe demand slowed down faster than expected. For anyone tracking supply chains, this signals potential future production cuts, maybe price pressures, or needing more aggressive sales tactics to clear stock. That is manufacturers' margins and future orders.
Unintended inventory reduction. That really highlights the challenge of forecasting in this market.
Okay, looking ahead, what do the projections suggest for Japanese industrial production? Meaty's latest survey forecasts a 2.8% rise in production for August, but then followed by a 0.3% dip in September. So a quick bump, then back down slightly. Expert, how much stock should we put in these forecasts, given that one step forward, one step back pattern we've been seeing?
That's an excellent point. Based on past performance, it's really crucial to remember that these corporate production plans often, well, they tend to be a bit optimistic compared to the actual results.
Right, companies hope for the best.
Naturally. So while an August bump is projected, history suggests we should take that with a grain of salt. Given that bias, MIDI itself still expects that one step forward, one step back trend to likely continue. For anyone making investment calls or planning logistics, it means we need to watch global economic trends very, very closely going forward.
Like what specifically? Oh, energy prices, geopolitical stability, what major central banks do with interest rates, the pace of recovery in key export markets. All those external forces will be hugely influential. They could easily soften or even wipe out those projected gains. Japan's economy is deeply linked globally.
So even with that projected August rise, the caution remains. And that historical optimism in forecasts is key context. It really underscores the ongoing global uncertainty, hitting even strong manufacturing bases like Japan, locking them into this kind of hesitant rhythm.
Well, we've certainly navigated the twists and turns of Japan's July 2025 industrial production data, from cars declining to electronic parts rising and that whole complex dance with inventories. It's clear the path forward is anything but straight.
It really highlights the selective pressures, doesn't it? And the opportunities within global manufacturing. It pushes us to look beyond the big averages and understand the detailed movements shaping things. It's definitely not a uniform picture out there. Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to chew on. Given this persistent one step forward, one step back pattern in a powerhouse like Japan, and this clear split, some sectors struggling, others surprisingly strong, how might these specific localized industrial trends ripple outwards? Could they cause unexpected shifts in global supply chains, maybe influence central bank thinking more broadly, or even reshape longer-term investment plans? Could Japan's current mixed bag actually be a preview of a more fragmented, less predictable global economic future, where the old indicators don't quite tell the whole story anymore? Something to ponder until our next deep dive.